ethics in us, then we think that we can then change at that level. When we started small, and when we said that power, leads to abuse. Now, if you look at, I think the problem with where do we take South Africa, there's no common vision, and there's no unity of command. There are so many voices that don't listen to each other and that don't speak with each other. Everybody has got something to say. There's just no unity of command. We are here today. There's another session somewhere, all analyzing and the like. But how do we bring this together? We see people fixated in the achievements of the past, in the achievement, and hiding behind them. The failures, the current failures. If I may want to be really controversial, please, it's not intentional, but I have to say it. I mean, the minister has an opportunity today as the leader of the public service in this session here to say the thing that he said were very profound, but I couldn't see the link in what you were saying and saying that now as the leader of the public service, in terms of leading like Mandela, this is how we are taking the country forward. So we see leadership everywhere, in administration, in politics, even across the political parties, not contextualizing their leadership to the current realities. I think that's a problem. If we can get there, I think we are going to be. Now, we find that there's no vision. We see people running the state through public platforms, social media, more than through well thought out public policy and programs. I think that's a problem that we have.
Okay.
Just the last one.
I know there's lots of problems we have.
Yeah. I think the administrators, yes. We can't trust the administrators to transform this Africa or South Africa to where we want it to be, because they are too conflicted. They are too conflicted. They have, they have benefited from ill-gotten wealth. And through looting of state resources. Now you can't say now that they should save this system to serve the public interest, because now you can't say change the system to disallow you to have access to looting. They can't do that. So I think we've got a problem here where the trends of, but the thing is, how do we move forward?
You're cutting through some very important aspects of what the current challenges are. Hence the importance of ethical leadership at all levels of society. I think we'll address it the panel, but I'll take two more. We'll be closing soon, so there was one here. Please, the mic on this side, please. Okay, maybe one, because he actually, sorry, first the hand and then second branch.
Good day, everyone. So my name is Mlamuli Bamba. I'm from Azania Chamber of Commerce. One of the frustrations I find with being young in this country is the government will say it has a problem. So I've got a business analysis background. And SMEs will come to us as the Chamber of Azania with amazing solutions for very same government problem. But when you go to government and say, hey, you would save on these metrics, risk, money, delivery, etc., government will say, you must wait for a tender. But if you're an incumbent of something, it's very hard to see solutions while you're in the mud. It is for the youth and others to come and say, hey, we've analyzed what you're going through, and you could try this. But then the same person tender. A tender means the incumbent, the person within the mud, has to figure this out first and then tender it out to people and say, oh, I've discovered the solution, now I want to implement it. So you're basically cutting the youth and SMEs and business people that have some value to bring in the knees, because we have to wait for a tender. And then we turn around and say we don't want tender for years. So that system is very strange in terms of how will value creation, outside of knowing someone in a high position, which is also unethical to a certain extent, actually enter and solve a problem in government.
Thank you so much.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Can I introduce myself again?
Yes, can you?
Sorry. My name is Senzo and I'm with my team right here, Green Arcadia. So I'm the founder and the chairperson of this incredible team. Earlier on in the day, I posed a question, and I've been sitting and hoping somebody will actually answer it, especially the panel and maybe someone in the audience. And I don't like having or rather posing problems. I would rather prefer to have solutions. So that you can imagine my frustration when there wasn't really an answer that I wanted, or maybe there was a little bit, but it wasn't what I wanted. So, and then the panel, especially the young ladies, they also, emphasize on what I said, that talking about the gap that I talked about, where you've got a morally illiterate society with an ethically and morally intelligent leader, and how you close that gap. But we had a nice little example of how these gaps work. I've only, if I'm not mistaken, made a joke, and I noticed that my team was laughing, and the rest of the old people, sorry to call you that, did not even catch the joke. But it goes back to okay, it goes
Generational jokes.
we got it. And it goes back to that there is such a huge gap that we literally, even here, I love that we were given this platform, but we didn't even address it. We've got leaders in this room. We've got people who know what to do. But like the gentleman said, the confidence is lacking. Our confidence is shackled. We know that we are supposed to get from here to a certain level. But because there's also these dynamics that our panelists talked about, we are not confident enough to say, here, let me step out of the boundaries. And just a funny little example, I'm going to give you my answer because nobody gave me an answer. I was at the...
What was the question? I'm sorry, I wasn't here.
I'm going to repeat it, don't worry. Yeah. In the past 3 days, I was at the veterinary, South African, the Congress of the South African Veterinary Council. I'm a veterinary technologist. And you've got veterinarians. Most of the time, a veterinarian is going to be old and white. We know that. And now you've got, most of them are in their 70s. The young ones are coming in, and there's that gap in between. And then there's a huge gap between veterinarians and veterinary technologists. It's a difference. And we don't like each other. Simply because our work, our professions are so different, although they are complementary. It goes back to we are not really addressing how to close these gaps. We are working together, but we are actually working against each other. So my question earlier was, actually I did say, is how do we form the relationship, or how do we close the gap between a society that is morally illiterate with leaders who are ethically and morally intelligent. So one of the panelists said something about, what was it? Collective responsibility. Although he said it in the context of the society itself and taking responsibility of the leaders they put forth, I then thought, earlier the room was so big, and I thought all of us here are people who have been dead leaders, we are the converted. And I thought, why don't we start our own, what do you call them, organization, like, go for the voting poll and stuff. Call it Leaders Alliance. All of us together, we could literally be that voice that one of us cannot be. If we all stood together for this leading like Mandela, we could literally make that difference. Because right now we are highlighting problems and we are really not coming up with solutions. But we all have solutions. If we all get together and we work together, then we will have the solution. And then we will be leading. Because the community that we want to change, the community that I highlighted, which we believe is morally illiterate, will literally see that ethical and morally intelligent leaders are doing. And surely they will then follow suit and all rather vote for us or vote for one of us who be the chairman.
Yes, thank you, Raja. That's exactly what Leading Mandela is, that platform within society, on all sectors of society, to be able to come together and to be able to lead ethically, to make a difference. There was one more, and then the panel can then respond to that, please.
years, and now decided to put my time into helping other people make income for themselves, because I've identified that a lot of people in my youth category are literally struggling to make ends meet, sometimes even varsity to actually get some of the things going right. So as I've started this program, I've come into a lot of speed bumps, and I also did speak to a friend of mine who does work in local government to ask how I could actually implement this program to also help others. But unfortunately, I've come to a roadblock because, like the brother over there just said, you need a 10. You know what I mean? And at the same time, not a lot of people want to listen to something that involves the internet, or do you understand? And in this case, it is a matter of innovating with the times to move and make jobs for other people like ourselves. So how do I, as me being a young leader, come out, bring this forward to the people in a way that will also enlighten others? Because at the moment I'm finding it very hard and very difficult. And as I go to other people who do have the means and who have the power, they are also limiting what I can for my people, because I'm not doing this for myself, I'm doing this to serve others, I'm doing this so other people can also have a job and come out of the poverty that they're in.
Thank you so much. Maybe before I hand over to the panel, what I'd like to just share briefly is that, remember that I spoke about this earlier, Nelson Mandela, what resources did he and his comrades have, his colleagues? What resource did they tap into that unleashed such great power for them to achieve their objectives? And that is part of the Leading Like Mandela program. As Leka mentioned, it's a program about leadership from within. The power lies within each one of us. The resources are also within them. It's about how do you unleash them. And yes, whilst you're doing that, you will then transform the system, as what Kanshi is saying, by being an example, by leading by example, and address some of the challenges that our brothers mentioned earlier that we face, that there's a dire need to change them. So, on the panel, maybe we will lead with some of the challenges. I would like to respond to those first.
Yeah, I can hear myself. Excellent. So I'm going to answer. I'm going to try and answer that. I think because I wanted to speak a little bit about the SMEs as well. So if you'll allow me. Okay, so I'm going to start on that actually, because I think that's particularly. I understand. Because I create this rest understanding. Lovely, you from the Chamber of Zania. I think you've identified very acutely part of the issue that many, particularly young people, have come forward with. And it's something that I'm starting to grapple in this collective space. So the first thing is that there is definitely a directive both from the President and the Premier to prioritize SMEs run by young people, by women, by people with disabilities. So that's the first thing. But the second thing is that we also have this idea that we must always wait for a tender from government. And there are many problems here, right? The first problem is there's so much red tape around the procurement. And in some ways there should be lots of red tape because we want to make sure that money is spent in the best way. And often in theory, the tender must be awarded to the person who could provide the service at the lowest cost. And that's another interesting dynamic that is also a barrier to entry, because a lot of these smaller businesses are sometimes unable to provide that particular service at the lowest possible cost. So that's something I think we need to engage with further, because it requires more structural support of businesses, particularly before they walk to this process of a tender. But I also want to talk about other government initiatives that are not government. I want to be very clear, it's something I'm still learning about. But there is a lot of support for SMEs to get them into different projects. Now, I'm getting a bit familiar with the agriculture one, but there are opportunities, and it's also about this last question on innovation and the fourth industrial revolution, about how we can, right now it's very niche, but how we can provide that support. So I think one of the first things that we need to do, and it is something I've sort of suggested, but I'm going to try and take through further, is to have a full, if not a document, some way of us identifying all the different projects that assist young people in particular. Whether it be through SME's business around this innovation question in one place. So that if I'm a person who's looking for opportunity or I have a business idea or whatever the case may be, then I can go on this particular website and say, here are the hundreds of programs that do support the kinds of things that I'm looking at. And then the next one, how do I actually do it? So one of the things I recently discovered as early as last night is that the Gauteng Provincial Treasury actually offers training on a Wednesday. I'll get the address, I think it's number 76 Fox, particularly for SMEs, on how to craft applications for tenders and those sorts of things. You know, what are the compliance issues? What are people looking for? You know, those sorts of technical know-how. And that's the kind of stuff I think we need to keep pushing so that we capacitate and we give the skills to SMEs and to community cooperatives to be able to actually play this game. But it's very much well noted, and it is definitely something that's on the agenda. But also on the thing of innovation and the Internet of Things, big data, etc. It is definitely on the agenda. The difficulty we're having, and we must be honest, is that we're competing on one level there, fourth industrial revolution, and on another level, our people don't have access to electricity. Yeah. You know, so it's like chalk and cheese. You're trying to compete in two different spaces. And while I think that we must, of course, our priority must be here, we also can't be left behind. And this is something that I think we're all struggling to navigate because there's only so much personnel, budget, etc., etc. But that's exactly the point I think you are making, that in South African society, particularly in maybe not the private sector, but in business, there are people with these expertise and skills. So I think that it needs to be a further discussion, and it has started, but more on a national level. I don't know if you saw the president last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, had a digital economy summit. What does this digital economy look like? So I think that's also something we need to pick up on and see how we can really bring it down to a grassroots level. So that somebody in Tembisa or Soshanguve who has an opportunity or an idea can then actually be given such an opportunity. Can I make a very quick comment on, ma'am, I didn't get your name, I just noticed it's Arcadian team. Hanse, thank you. The question around how do we move or close this gap between a morally illiterate society, sort of vis-a-vis a morally, ethically intelligent leadership. I think it's the other way around, personally. I don't know, perhaps I misunderstood the question, but I view it as the opposite. I view it as society being more morally intelligent, and therefore being very uncomfortable with how things have been going, and therefore having this outcry. So I actually view it as the opposite, and I think the way to close that gap is exactly what you had said, for us to get to take that step forward. And one of the closing things I wanted to talk about is that, you know, as a young person, as young people, we can't wait for a space at the table. I can tell you from experience, nobody's going to give you a space at the table. You have to take it. Yeah. That's what we've had to do. We've had to come, for lack of a better analogy, we kicked the door down during Fees Must Fall. And we said, we're here whether you like it or not, you're going to address this issue of lack of access to higher education. And then they're dealing with that and like, right, now what do we do about society? We're dealing with education, let's move to the next one. How do we deal with youth unemployment? How do we deal with youth entrepreneurship, etc.? So the point I'm making, and I think we all agree here, is that we don't have the luxury of waiting, for an opportunity, for this, for that. We have to create the opportunity ourselves. We have to create the job ourselves. We have to find a way to make a meaningful life for ourselves. Perhaps our children and our grandchildren will have that luxury and privilege of it being there, but it's not there right now. So yeah, I think that's a very important point. And the other thing I forgot to mention, but I think is important. Sorry, it's around millennials, right? Which is the majority of young people now. A lot of people say, look at these millennials, instant gratification, impatience, all of these different, these young people just. And then I sit there and I think, well, yes, to some extent that's true. But it's that very impatience that makes us unaccepting of the status quo. It's that very impatience that says, no, we're not going to allow it. It's that very impatience when they told us about a 13% fee increment. We said, but why, how, where? We did the research and figured out it was far too much. Actually, we're not going to accept it. And it's because of that thing, I don't know what the word is yet, but that thing in this generation of that fire that says it's not okay. And maybe our parents were willing to accept it, our grandparents went through incredible oppression. But that is exactly why we can't accept the current status quo. And that's exactly why we're going to continue to fight. And I think that's an important thing for us to take as current leaders.
Thank you. And as the Leading Like Mandela program, we will definitely support those initiatives in terms of creating those platforms, granting access, as Messiah says, to open doors where possible, because we have access to some of those. And through being the voice of the people, collective, this is where then we reclaim our power and live according to the values of our great leaders. Thank you. All right, in the panel, anyone would you like to take? Yes, Advocate Colin?
I'll be brief because I didn't hear any questions actually about the frustrations. And the question I want to start is that, frustration is negative energy. And it is disempowering. It can lead to defeat, it can lead to loss of hope. The power is in our hands. Let us not disempower ourselves. Let us appreciate the power of advocacy and lobbying. Let us not get tired to keep on knocking and making things happen. They won't happen on their own. When it took to the streets in 1976, it was also, the impatience that we had as young people. And we didn't wait for anybody to do anything for us. We took it upon ourselves to make things happen. Also, let us not undermine the power of education. In 1996, the cabinet adopted the National Crime Prevention Strategy. For the first time, it was a comprehensive and integrated strategy in terms of fighting crime. And one of its components was the question of public values and education, with an emphasis on crime prevention. Yes, we must combat crime as it happens, but we combat crime after it has happened. We are reactive. The long-term solution lies in social prevention of crime. So some of the issues that are turned about here, let us be proactive about it and put them firmly on the table. And those of us who are here who say are converted, then it is incumbent upon us to go out there, to galvanize and mobilize. Do not get tired. Don't say you are preaching to the converted. As the converted, we have the responsibility of bringing more to our side. And not just say we are converted. Thank you.
Hi. Okay, so great. I'm also just listening. I really like what you just said, sir. We tend to come into spaces like this and bring our frustration. From the outside world, I think this is like a nice therapy group. And then we all leave, and then we feel really depressed. Sorry. I do not know where my mind is today, but to share a few DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy tools, I suppose. It's very important that when we do come here, as much as we speak to the problem, we've all faced them. But the reason why we're all in this room is somehow we found solutions. And that is the power. And it gives me goosebumps of being in this room, is because I know the person who's tired of hearing, what's that, entrepreneur? Yes, there's just too many T's in prayers. But you know that frustration, and you've worked around it. See the solutions that you have come around, the people that you have met, the places that you have been, the people that you have, the social entrepreneurship that you've developed, your own program that can only have come through adversity. And that only means then that you aren't sitting here on your own. And that's the beauty of having come across problem, is that we come into a place, but we aren't just representing ourselves. We have people behind us who understand, whose situations we understand, but have been able to be a little bit a step ahead, to have a little bit of foresight and solutions. And so that frustration right there, that's the power. I mean, just to speak about paving my own way, right? So I have albinism, so please don't guess my race. You don't know. Don't guess my race. You don't know. But I was raised in a space where my mom didn't tell me I was visually impaired or partially blind or completely blind, or you move in the world because you have to. And so I was raised in a very small suburb. No cars, so I had neighbors with a few people. But what I'm trying to say, there were no cars, and there was very little noise. So I felt safe, and I went walk to school, walk back home, walk past the old Templa's house, back. And then you go to varsity, and there's lots of noise, and then you have to get to work, and there's people and noise and taxis that hit you. And then I was working at Vits, and there's just too much noise. And I realized I can't navigate. So I do what we do best in our duration, Google. Well, I Googled the Guide Dog Association. That was a solution. And I realized, but wait a minute, if I have this problem, thousands of other people have it. The one I did is I found the other 1,000 that had the problem of not being able to be mobile, not being able to see. And then I realized, oh wait, I can't go to a department because people don't know I'm blind, and if they do know that I am, then they pretend that I don't know that they're just like, shh. And so I created Holding Albus, which for me was creating solutions for people who had frustrations. But what I knew is I had a leg up. I had a private school education, I had great support, but I had serious resilience. Because sometimes life gives you things because you need that. Yeah. And so I took what I knew and the determination and the guidance and the leadership and the nurture and the confident boost that my parents gave me, and I started imparting it on other people. And so when I moved in, side story, when I moved into a space, my landlord was, I applied to guide dogs, went on to a guide dog training, had a lovely landlord who was like, you're not getting a guide dog in my yard. I adopted a dog. And I then took him to service school. So I can have a service dog. And that I now know what it is that most people struggle with, who can't see what are the resources. And so my work is to try and find those resources. And I love spaces like this because I know it's doable. It's hard, but fixing real social issues isn't easy. And what's easy is being Zoom and be like, hey. Comic relief, you watch, and then you work. Because there are people that we are representing as we're sitting here. And in this space, and it's the one thing I love about social entrepreneurship, and that's something maybe that we learned by osmosis from our struggle fighting for freedom, is that, I'm sorry, I'm sure time is over, but the ability to put together something from nothing and make it go. And Sia undermines his work. He has been in the filming industry for 16 years and has tried to create films who say, no, they undermine knowledge. Then we find other niches. And that's the beauty in this space, is because you may never know who may go, actually, I have a job. I run a social entrepreneurship that funds people with inabilities. I hate the word disability. A little side note, disability is finite. Like it's gotta be, you are unable to do something, and then move and then unable to do something. You're not just in jail. You don't just stand. So there's a level of empowerment in the space that we're in. And I think that's the beauty. It's going, okay, this is the state. Now, move forward. And it's that knowledge generation and those narratives and finding our own natural, authentic solution development that moves us forward as a country.
Thank you so much.
I will briefly, I mean, it is very intimidating. And I promise not to be half as inspiring.
Don't worry, I can't see you.
I was actually thinking I should close my eyes and just feel what it is like to sit in front of an audience that you can't really see. Anyway, but I. So it's appreciative of ums and ahs so much. From what we hear in the room at the moment, we're here to talk about ethical leadership, and I very much come from, I suppose, an anti-corruption type of thing, and there's a lot of talk about corruption. That's where we are in the country at the moment. And I've just had a thought, thinking about Mandela and about the legacy and everything, and the discussion about even having solved the problem of the time. And partly that was it was an inequality problem, but it was also bringing black and white closer together. We're still sitting with that distinction today. We might have gone backwards rather than forwards, I think. But I also think that the other big problem that we do need to solve is an ethical leader probably, or it's a good leader today. The problem that we have is bringing people from various extremes closer together. We do have racial extremes, gender extremes, we've got age extremes, and we have, very importantly, the economic and financial extremes that we have. And I think a leader is probably someone who can bring all of these people, some of them probably who do not want to go in that direction, but who ought to go in that direction, as someone said earlier, closer together. And let me leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that one. All right, so we've come to, as we've stated, this is the first Mandela talk. Okay. Yeah, so you're part of the first of the first of the first of the firsts. Okay. So this is for leaders who take initiative, who take the power back and say we are making a difference. So there are future dialogues that we'll be hosting. As we stated, we've partnered with government. So there were some questions around, so what is government going to do about it? We talk, but what action is going to take place? There's policy briefs that will be developed after this dialogue, which will then be, we are working directly with the Department of Public Service and Administration. We had the DG, Professor Richard Lavinia, who will then work with us in terms of supporting the government, improving governance within the public sector, as well as the chairperson, Advocate Cezanne, the chairperson of the Public Service Commission and his team, to take this forward to improve the quality and the effectiveness of our public servants. So in that regard, this platform creates. We also partnered with the United Nations to drive the attainment of Sustainable Development Goals. And this is where you, as we stated, the summit later this year, and the one that will be in South Africa in April next year, the Global Youth Summit on SDGs, is your opportunity to contribute and say, this is what we want different now. As the youth, we are frustrated. This is what we see as solutions. Because remember, if you see a challenge, it means you are already preparing yourself to find a solution. Because that is the beginning of the awareness that there's something needs to change. And what did Nelson Mandela teach us? You see that? You have to make that change. You have to lead that change. And yes, some changes take time. We know 67 years. So sometimes it takes a long time when you have a great vision to achieve, because you have to lead and shift the consciousness of your people. Because as they say, only when your people are ready will they manifest. because the world is a mirror, it's reflecting us constantly. If I talk to my generation, well, it's now my generation, okay, the young at heart. But in terms of, if I look in my selfie and it doesn't look good, do I change the picture only on the selfie, on the mirror, or do I also change it on myself? Yeah, we can use filters, but first we need to change it on ourselves, right? So, to change the world, we need to change ourselves first. And that is the power that all of us have. And that's what Nelson Mandela has told us. That you have the power to change the world by changing yourself first. So, without further ado, I'm going to call upon Tembela Mandela, who is now, firstly to thank the panel, but why be here? Because he would like to, there's a tribute to his great-grandfather Nelson Mandela, because he's the next generation. To please, Tembela, come up to the stage first, come up to the platform. Okay. And then after it, we'll just take the phone. From the next generation, as we said, it's intergenerational. We're fortunate to have our struggle stars, grandchildren and great-grandchildren here to take the legacies forward.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
It's been a long day.
It's a long walk to find.
I say soldiers march all the time, and we are pushing. Just like Nelson Mandela, he was a pusher. So I wrote this tribute poem to him. Nelson Mandela. N. Nations of the Renaissance respect him. E. Expressions of a grandfather, the prophecy I speak. L. Liberty of the great prophet. That's why I approach speeches of motivation as he stands tall. O. Oppressed. And naturally, he is a father to my poetry. M. Moments of righteousness, the tradition and culture of the course of man's words as he preaches. A. I'm an affirmative mind, a true African, grown from the roots of this continent. And kosisikelele izwe lakhe nobubele bakhe. D. Dedication to the long walk to freedom, because the struggle continues for mankind. E. Equality. Equality. He is a legend. L. Long live the fellowship of his wisdom. A. Address him as the greatest grandfather of this country. Of course. Dalibunga.
Oh, thank you. Hi. Okay, before we call upon our young leader to do the closing and panel, I'd like to say, we're going the long walk. On a Friday afternoon, this shows dedication and commitment is what leadership's about. It's not an easy walk, but this is what it shows. Commitment, dedicating your time to this, and may continue to lead like Mandela. Thank you so much. And while the panel comes down, we would like to play a video and then a closing. Thank you. And got my sister, my sisters, Duma, come join us.
It is and music and dancing.
It's also, we remember Johnny Clegg.
Be at peace with one.
I think it's important for us to remember that we are united together now today. We have to continue the legacy.
And at peace with myself. But I don't see much movement at the back there,
Okay, all of you at the back, please stand up to embrace the movement. Come on. You must join us. Come, push it. You can't go to Ghana otherwise. Come on. We are seeing now Mandela, right? It's no longer seeing for now. Now we are seeing Emilio Youth. All right, I'd like to call upon for our closing and a vote of thanks, please. Yeah, so we have the national spokesperson of the South African Union of Students, Mr. Tabu Shinganga. So we'd like to welcome you on to deliver a vote of thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So I'm tasked with the unsavory mission of bringing this event to a dignified closing. But at the same time, I'm very wary that I'm standing between young people and their weekend. And so I try to be as quick as humanly possible. First and foremost, Her Excellency, I don't know if she's just somewhere. Oh, she is, sorry. Her Excellency Mchunu, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity, for taking the initiative to come about with the program to lead like Mandela. As a young person, on behalf of the South African Union of Students, we take this as an opportunity to reflect on what it means to be a young person in 2019, what kind of values we're supposed to be emulating from our former leaders, and it's something that we should take on as a baton that you're saying, some of the things that we should take on moving forward. So I think the program and the initiative alone is worthy of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, just give a good round of applause, please. To also, I think I'll just go speak up and speak and I'll thank them as I go by. But I want us to, if I'm not mistaken, or again, I must not even assume your gender, I apologize. Well, what you mentioned here. No, I cannot assume. She said something, don't assume my race. It's a very important issue in this day and age. I cannot assume the gender. I will not necessarily know. But she said South Africans don't listen, and I found that to be very astonishing. You know, the first thing you do when you go into a platform of people and you don't listen, but South Africans don't listen. And I want you to draw those words to take a bit of a reflection part. And I think Dilega had said that we need a leadership that is embedded in dialogue, a leadership that is intergenerational, one that combines wisdom and innovation. I think it's a theme that came out throughout many speakers, the issue of intergenerational dialogue, the issue of wisdom, and the issue of innovation. She raises the point that we need leaders who serve for a greater good within the context of the time, making reference, of course, I think Wabogile had also alluded to it, when young people today speak with so much passion, and I say with so much disgust rather, that Mandela sold out. Mandela sold out. You are saying it so proudly, so boldly, with the political liberties today, but Mandela sold out. What was it 25 years ago? We will not have these particular liberties. So stick within the context of the time. Father Simangaliso Kantwa, I'm assuming in abstention, had raised very critical points about the charter and the 9 values, and I think no one bothered to read, but they're standing in front of us. He mentioned the issue of the pursuit of instant gratification is something that is destroying the youth. He makes, in fact, I want to rephrase it. It's the issue of power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that is what the essence of his topic or the presentation you've given us cause us to reflect upon, because it leads us to the question that what does ethical leadership mean in the context of South Africa today, with the deep loss of trust in our public servants, of us here, wherever they are, with the deep loss, and we're hoping for the young people to bring about trust in our public servants. From the United Nations, we thank you very much for the words and reminding us to exemplify issues of courage and peace and development within our context, issues of good governance, of ethical leadership towards the National Development Plan. And also Advocate Cezanne and again as an extension had raised issues of critical reflection against the backdrop of a new dawn. As young people, we are very much impatient. I remember when the President Mandela had made the national, what's that speech they always give, State of the Nation address, and someone said a new yawn. So I think it calls upon critical reflection within the context of a new dawn, that out with the old. And when they said a new yawn, that someone was me. But when they said a new yawn, we're saying that we want the language to begin to change. We want young people to begin to be given platform, and we're seeing it today with the likes of the first years, the likes of the young people in Parliament today who are being given responsibility, or more like demanding responsibility. And so hopefully that yawn will soon, you fall asleep and then you wake up, it's dawn. So I think we're heading in the right direction. He speaks about the issue of positions and titles. I think he makes a very cogent point, and I want us to reflect upon. It is not a position that makes a leader. It is a leader who, in essence, gives honor to the particular position. And when we reflect, it's not a classic example in our own presidency. We've had 4 presidents, and surely there's a term that we cannot speak in great honor. So it is the person who brings honor to the position, not the position which brings honor to the person. I don't know if some of you got that, but it's okay. I'll laugh on my behalf. One thing that is also important to reflect upon is the issue of, I think, it's a thing that we encounter many a times with young people, is when we think of corruption. I mean, many of the things that are coming across is corruption, is moral degeneration, and so forth. And often we tend to give corruption a color. And many a times when we think of corruption, when we think of all of these things, we think black. I think, I don't know, it was Advocate Cezanne who was speaking over here, bringing us issues to stain off with multi-million corruption, issues of Bosasa, of stain off, and all of these things. So I think there's an issue to regenerate the moral fabric of society holistically across the board, not just in our political circles or political spaces, but in the private sector, in journalism. I think just last week there was I'm sorry, Mama, you don't like social media, but on social media it was trending. There was a journalist who wrote the most absurd article, Rastafarian with no job, so something like that. But it was a disgusting article, and so it speaks equally to the issue of ethical journalism that is required in our society. So this is when we speak about ethical leadership, it's something that must happen to our everyday life. I know there's the issue of time. Then there's an issue of Bob Senzo, again in abstention. Those who are close to him will please, I was hoping we'd be here, because he highlighted a very critical point about we're privileged to have had Mandela. But you see, the issue about privilege is that it brings about one of 2 things. It's either privilege blinds, it's either you're privileged to privilege, many times, and you see in our social funds where people just don't understand that they're privileged, or it's either that you're blinded by it. The very same people who say that Mandela is a sellout are the very same people who are blinded by the privileges today. So I think it's an important thing that he raises, and the reference point what we speak about. But also I think to bring it to a wrap, to the panel speakers, thank you very much. The unfortunate thing with this vote of thanks is that you have to listen attentively to everyone from beginning to end. And so because of that, I have a long list, and it sounds like I'm doing a speech, but really I'm just doing a recollection. I have no yawning, unfortunately, so I'm just doing a recollection. But the panelists, I think the first group spoke about embracing morality and socio-economic transformation. We must all strive to be, I think it was Captain Vinny, the video that was playing over there, Captain Vinny in our everyday life. Sometimes, and I always say this quote, consistency is always hard when no one is applauding, when no one knows about it. And it's at that point in time when you need to look for yourself, because you need to look into yourself. Woman from Tanzania requires us to just breathe, just breathe and look within yourself to bring about that much required will to continue, will to service others. Last but not least, I think Dr. Koza raises it was a profound statement. I mean, if I could, I'd just read it all together. But I think I captured one part. I was also very fatigued, if I'm to be honest. But I captured one part and one profound part. He says, action without vision is merely passing time. And vision without action is daydreaming. But vision plus action, for me, is leading like Mandela. And so, again, to bring it to a close, South Africans don't listen. Again, I'm going to steal and plagiarize you a bit. The youth of 2019 have leadership. The youth of 2019 have leadership. Leading like Mandela 2019 looks like this. If not us, who? If not now, when? And your answer cannot be others. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just before we close, I'd also like to thank Sisi Nileka, my big sister as well. Thank you for walking this walk on behalf of all of us. I know I've been fortunate for the past 9 to 10 years to have walked it with you. And I've seen your taking forward that spirit of your grandfather, or granddad, as you say. It is leaders like you that give us hope and inspiration, that there's definitely a brighter future in the dawn of greatness that we are facing. I've been fortunate that when I say thank you, this walk comes with many sacrifices and many struggles. I've watched, as you rose to take up leadership that needed to say, being the first Mandela to stand up and call our leaders to account, to remind them of the moral values that they'd forgotten, to create courage, especially when you're leading a foundation. Because those very leaders are the ones who would not support your foundation. And yet you took that courage, like your granddad. That's a sign of great leadership, to stand up and to take it on single-handedly. So we say thank you to you for continuing to lead like granddad, leading like Mandela, and for providing this platform for us as South Africans and as Africans. So I'm honored to serve in your foundation and the work that you do. But I'd like to also, from all of us, say thank you. May God continue to keep up the spirit of the Okay, then I'd like to thank our partners once again, the UN, for all the efforts. There's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes. Ms. Morocco and your team from the Public Service Commission, we really thank you. You really worked tirelessly to make this a success. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We have a birthday. Oh, yeah. He disappeared. No? Is he here? Khabo? You had a birthday just the day after Nelson Mandela, so you've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes as well. So
and it's his birthday today.
yeah, so happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Khabo. Happy birthday to you. Why did you sing it in another language for me? Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. As I said, there are many more dialogues that we'll be hosting. It's the beginning of it. Thank you so much. Continue the long.